Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the chaos in Egypt. Is this how a revolution looks like? Is this how democracy is born? Who's behind it? Who's directing it? Who is financing it? Who created the legwork for it to start? The answer is many people, many organized and unorganized efforts. The history of the regime in Egypt dates back, of course, 30 years of Hosni Mubarak's ruling in Egypt. Before him, it was Anwar Sadat, and before Anwar Sadat, it was Jamal Abdel Nasser, who led a revolution in the 50s to take over the country and establish a regime that would become one of the most important regimes in the history of the Arab world. It is the regime that was very much feared by Western powers because Jamal Abdel Nasser wanted to unite all the Arabs. And everyone in the Arab world listened to Jamal Abdel Nasser, or as the Egyptians call him, Gamal Abdel Nasser. Well, the Western powers, of course, would not allow the Arabs to unite and be strong, especially at a time when Israel was only a fledgling, few years old state. Since Jamal Abdel Nasser, Anwar Sadat tried his luck with war with Israel and did a pretty good job. And then he tried his luck with peace and did a pretty good job too. Egypt signed a peace agreement with Israel. Egypt is the largest, strongest in the Middle East. Well, I should rephrase that. Within the Arab world. Because definitely Israel surpasses Egypt in strength and military strength, even though the numbers are on the Egyptian side. Then it was Hosni Mubarak who very much gave the West everything it asked for and more. He continued the peace process with Israel. He very much obliged to all American and Israeli demands. They wanted him to shut down the border crossings between Gaza and Egypt. He did. He even installed an iron gate that goes all the way deep down in the ground so the Palestinians cannot even smuggle food, etc., to Gaza. So, now, Hosni Mubarak finds himself abandoned by all these forces. United States President asked for a quick change in the regime. The head of states of England, France, Germany, and Spain, the traditional Europe, asked for the president to step down immediately. These are the same forces, ladies and gentlemen, that divided the Middle East into the pieces that you see now, into the countries that you see now. England and France very much divided the Middle East into these smaller countries. They drew the borders. The people there had little to do with it, if any. And now the people find themselves, of course, after the Bush Revolution. He wanted to spread democracy in the Middle East. Hosni Mubarak went along with Bush and his father's demand to serve the United States, even with army that he sent in the first Gulf War, Desert Storm. If you remember, Egyptians fought in Desert Storm on the side of the Americans. That was when Iraq occupied Kuwait and the United States wanted them out. Egypt was one of those coalition partners led by Hosni Mubarak to go in and give a hand to the Americans. He did. He also did in many, many occasions when the Americans needed Hosni Mubarak was there. He did everything for America. He was a dictator, but he was our dictator. So I guess now he is no longer our dictator because Hillary Clinton had some tough words for him. Barack Obama had some tough words for him. The whole West is abandoning the Egyptian president. Today he said he would step down, but that would send the country into chaos and into unmeasurable disasters. And it would. What is happening, ladies and gentlemen, in Egypt is something out of spy novels. Who created this chaos? Well, the people in Egypt have been under pressure, economic pressure, political pressure for the last 30 years. And definitely the last 10 or 15 years, economics had a toll on Egypt. So the street was ready, but it has been ready for many years. Why now? Who is pushing the buttons? Who is financing this? One of the names behind this revolution, and put that in quotation, the revolution part, one of the names is George Soros. Those of you who know George Soros, and we have a picture of Mr. Soros right there. Mr. Soros is a well-known liberal, Jewish, American, with billions of dollars, and he tried to change countries before. Egypt was not the first country that he put his hand in. He tried his luck with many revolutions in South America, like Peru, in Eastern Europe, Ukraine, in Georgia, in many other countries around the world. George Soros is one of the globalists who want a one world order, and with money you can buy anything you want. World Economic Forum, that's very much what George Soros is all about. He's all about making money and controlling those who head states. One of the names in Egypt that is being kicked around is al-Baradei, Mohammed al-Baradei. Mohammed al-Baradei, he was the chief inspector with the International Atomic Energy Agency, United Nations agency, who after, of course, he was handpicked by the West to head the agency. He's an Egyptian. There's no doubt about his nationalism and his love for his country. But Mohammed al-Baradei comes with a baggage, a big one. Mohammed al-Baradei sits on an organization called the Crisis Management or International Crisis Group with Mr. Soros. He also a trustee on one of the finance companies that Mr. Soros owns. Mohammed al-Baradei is a trustee on one of those companies. Mohammed al-Baradei is coming to Egypt with a package too. The relationship between Soros and al-Baradei. Al-Baradei was able to go back to Egypt. Before he went back, he was able to start an organization, the Change Association, the National Change Association, جمعية التغيير in Arabic. He is spending a lot of money. Well, he's not, but somebody did. Mr. Soros spent millions of dollars organizing in Egypt through al-Baradei and others. What you witnessed today in the last few days is not something that came overnight. It's something that has been in the works. Like I said, is George Soros controlling all these people in Egypt? No. You don't have to control people who want change in their country. You just have to wait for the right moment to make that change happen, because people were ready for this change. They have been struggling for this change. They have been living under Mubarak for 30 years, a dictatorship. I'm no friend of Mubarak, and I have called on all of these Arab leaders to go. Leave the people alone, because dictatorships are not good for countries, or are they? Because in many instances, it took a dictatorship or a dictator to hold the country together, like we have seen in Iraq. Iraq was a country that had seen prosperity in many areas when Saddam Hussein was the president of that country. Yes, he was a dictator, but he was also our dictator, because the United States had very much funded him. Sometimes he did not really need much fund, but he needed political stability, and the United States was able to give him that political stability. When it was time for him to go, the United States decided that he must go. The same thing we saw in Tunisia a few weeks back. There was a dictator there. He was loved by the West. It was time for him to go. Now it is time for Mr. Mubarak to go. But is this the way to handle friends, or there are no friends in politics? As a matter of fact, there are no friends in politics, and there are no countries to be trusted. All these Arab leaders should have stood up one and spoke all together in one voice, one time, that they will not help America to control and destroy Iraq. If they would have stood for Iraq against the war that the United States had imposed on the Iraqis, if the Arab countries would have stood with the regime in Iraq, we will not be seeing Mr. Hosni Mubarak leaving. The world and powers only understand strength. If you show strength, they will respect you. You go along with what they want you to do, they will stomp all over you when it comes time to change you. They are not, of course they can, and if they want to, they can do the same thing in Syria, but they'll live in Syria till the end, until no one is left and Syria would come into their camp on its own. The Arab countries have allowed the United States to do this because they wanted to keep their regimes. They thought if they went along with removing Saddam from power, then they will be spared. They calculated wrong. What is happening in the streets of Egypt? You have to remember one thing, ladies and gentlemen, what you are about to see. These are the same people, same religion mainly, same ethnicity. They are brothers and sisters. You will see them fighting. Same people. Just a week ago, no one would have thought that this would happen in Egypt. Let's just give you a sample of what took place yesterday. Okay, what you just saw is chaos. That's not a revolution. That is somebody who wanted chaos in Egypt, because that is not how revolution looked like. And in Egypt, if anyone thinks that by Hosni Mubarak, when he steps down, that everything is going to be okay, they are dreaming. Egypt is the largest country, the largest Arab country, and it's extremely important in the politics of the region and the world. When you have someone like Muhammad al-Baradei, who lived very much most of his life in the United States and abroad, sure, he's an Egyptian, he's an accomplished Egyptian and all that good stuff, fine. But there were other leaders and other parties there. When you see the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt actually going into a pact with Mr. al-Baradei, because they know and they understand, and the message to them was, don't even try to get your own candidate here. This is the man that the West wants. And I'll tell you what, it'll be a dark day in the history of Egypt if Muhammad al-Baradei, who is supported by George Soros, will actually become the president of that country. Few weeks back, the Palestinians said, we will not negotiate with Israel because Israel is not negotiating, and Israel is very much, they want to build settlements, they want to populate the areas that we are negotiating about. And for the last 15 years, they have been saying, negotiate, negotiate. So the Palestinians got fed up with negotiations, and they went a different directions. They went into the direction of getting recognition, building their own state, regardless of what Israel says, and building recognition, getting recognition from the people around the world and countries around the world. They refused to listen to the United States, to Obama, because Obama is also in the camp of the Israelis, of course, and he wants, well, not really wants, but he will do what Israel tells him to do. So they told him to put pressure on the Palestinians to keep this charade going of the negotiations and not negotiations. And in the meantime, the land is being grabbed by the Israelis on day-to-day basis. Egypt very much stood with the Palestinians on this and said, if the Palestinians don't want to negotiate, that's their decision. We cannot make them. Well, the United States wanted Egypt to actually pressure the Palestinians to accept negotiations. Egypt could not, of course, because accepting negotiation, and with Egypt being out there in the open, pressuring the Palestinians, it would not have worked. Well, Hosni Mubarak finally did not agree to the Israelis' demand and to the Zionist demand of pressuring the Palestinians. Hosni Mubarak has to go. Now, is that the only thing that Hosni Mubarak, was that the only reason? Of course not. His people have been fed up. See, this is a legit, what you are witnessing on the streets of Cairo and all over the cities in Egypt, it is a legit concern. It is a legit revolution. The people wanted to revolt against the leader for many reasons. But this is an Arab country, the largest. And if it goes into chaos, many countries in the region will go into chaos. It will be the end of the Arab world. Let's put that in quotation because there is no such a thing. But it will be the end of even the dream of the Arab world if this chaos continues to go the way it is, and if power is not handed down peacefully in Egypt. Don't think that Mubarak is by himself. Mubarak is not by himself. There are millions of people who think Mubarak has done a good job. There are millions more who think he did not. And they have every right to think that. So you have a country that is split. You have a party that has been in control of 80 million people for the last 30 years. You cannot remove these people overnight. And if you think you are, especially the ones with the guns, they are the ones with the guns. They are the ones with the power. It is not easy to take the power away from them. These people in these streets, they will get tired. These people are students, they are teachers, they are farmers, these are normal people in the streets with grievances, with legit grievances. All it took is for millions of dollars by George Soros and others to send that country into chaos. And chaos it is. The plan, the Zionist plan for the Middle East, ladies and gentlemen, you are witnessing its implementation as we speak. We are witnessing its implementations as we speak. They let these dictators and they protect them. They build them up just to tear them down in due time. Because the West is what made Hosni Mubarak. America is what made Hosni Mubarak. And it's not hard to tear him down. When you build a dictator, that dictator will be hated, and he is hated in Egypt. But like I said, the power base, the human base that is behind him, what you saw on the street, that is chaos. You know, who sent those idiots with horses and camels to go, a handful of horses going in the middle of thousands and tens of thousands of people? What are they? What are they thinking? That is stupidity in action. But you know what? It accomplished a lot. It accomplished a lot in front of the cameras. It accomplished a lot to say that these are the thugs of the regime. If you watch the news, ladies and gentlemen, you will see that it's being carried from one point of view. These revolutionaries in the streets, which most of them are good people, some of them are organized behind some ideologies, different ideologies, but the majority of these people are people who want to live, they want their country back. If you see the news and the coverage of the news, ladies and gentlemen, everything the news, anyone on Mubarak's side, they are thugs. Anyone in the street, even if they are thieves, even if they escaped from prisons, but they are out there with the demonstrators, then they are good people. That is not how things are in reality. But in the news, that's how they are. In Egypt, we have one people. They must remain one people. They must take power according to democracy. And the government had promised, the vice president had promised that when in August, you will know, and I guess doors will be opening up for whoever wants or whomever wants to put his name on the ballot. Hosni Mubarak himself said, I'm not running. That's a concession. He said, I'm not going to, because the word out there was that he's going to give the country, the regime, the power down to his son. He said, we're not going to do that. So the regime is making concessions. The people spoke, the regime listened. Do not destroy the country. That is very important for all Egyptians and all Arabs to understand. The conspiracy behind this is to destroy the country, to break up the country, to send the country into chaos, to send Egypt completely out of the Middle East diplomacy and leave Qatar in there, because that's exactly what Qatar had promised in meetings with Israelis, with Israeli generals. Qatar had promised that they will remove the Hosni Mubarak regime. How they can remove him? They have created Al Jazeera, which we spoke about Al Jazeera 5 years ago. We told you what Al Jazeera was all about, that it was nothing but a Zionist tool in the Middle East. Al Jazeera is like Fox Network. Fox Network had destroyed many of these countries in the Middle East. Fox Network had destroyed many countries in the Middle East, and it split people in the Middle East with the help of Al Jazeera. Every regime in the area there is scared to death from Al Jazeera. That is controlled by very small, about 200,000 people in Qatar who are actual Qataris. The population of Qatar is about 200,000, if that much. Controlling 80 million people, and they can basically control what they do, because Qatar wants to be the leader within the Arab countries. And they promise that they will do that. Let me go to the phones. I think you're on the air.
Yes, Dr. Tillawi, this is Brother Freedom.
Yes, sir.
I called you last week and we spoke about the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes.
Well, over the past week or so, Sean Hannity and Fox News have been pushing the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood were the ones that supposedly assassinated Anwar Sadat. And I thought it was Islamia that assassinated Anwar Sadat. It wasn't, and these people keep spreading those lies and whatnot. And could you please break down for us?
Well, okay.
Why Fox keeps spreading those lies? I mean, it was Islamia that killed Anwar Sadat.
Well, no. The what killed Anwar Sadat is a group. They were okay. The Muslim Brotherhood. I would say it's a group. It's a huge group in Egypt, and it has different currents within that same group. Now, the Muslim Brotherhoods, I mean, you know, they are a force, and if anyone, but you know what? I mean, the West will not allow the Muslim Brotherhood to be in control of Egypt.
But they do a lot of good for Egyptians.
Of course they do. Listen, Freedom. Let's not fall into the trap of whenever we hear the word Muslim being associated to an organization, that means it's bad. No. But you see, that's what, I mean, you know, this is the best example. When you heard what Sean Hannity was saying about, you know, the Muslim Brotherhood and all this stuff, you know, you yourself said, oh, that's a lie. But you see, there's nothing wrong to be associated with an organization that has Muslim or Islamic in it. They are good people. The Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt is a good organization.
That's right.
And they are not, it's not a terrorist organization. The only terrorist organization that is out there is the terrorist organization that the United States has created, which names Al Qaeda. And there's, by the way, there is no such a thing. It's like a mirage.
You're right.
You know, you see it, but it's not there.
But why don't somebody come on the news that say, hey, look, Fox, you're lying about the Muslim Brotherhood?
Because Fox Network, CNN, all these, it doesn't matter where they are. You see, let me tell you something. When you see all networks, regardless of their ideology, because you know as well as I do, CNN and Fox Network, they're two opposites. But when you see them all supporting each other and talking from the same point of view, or covering an event from the same point of view, you gotta know that something is wrong, because both of these organizations are supposed to be covering things differently, but yet on this issue they are covering the same. You must know that the hands of Zionism is in the mix.
That's right, Dr. Tillawi.
Okay?
And something else, I want to ask you this. Look, if this continue to go on in Egypt, the price of oil is going to get extremely high. As you know, right now it was close to $100 a barrel.
Yeah.
Now, how is that going to help
I don't know.
economy
Okay.
if oil is over $100?
I know, but why would oil go up though?
People are speculating now with suppose, I guess.
Well, I mean, Egypt, okay, if it's going to go, the only reason that oil might go up is now, let me tell you.
The Suez Canal, I know, yeah.
Well, no. You see, that's one thing, it will never happen because Israel and the United States will send their fleet over there to open up the Suez Canal. So that is not even an option there. No one can close the Suez Canal, period.
Okay, I want to ask you just this question.
But let me.
Next one's that's gonna fall is Saudi Arabia because something is happening right now that I do not like what's going on in the Middle East at all.
Well, of course I don't like it either, and I talked about it 10 years ago on this program. You know, the Zionist plan for the Middle East, and you know what? When I talk about things like 6 and 7 years, people don't know, and they think, what is he talking about? And then we see things happening in action. This is what I said. Israel had got a plan to destroy its enemies, the enemies around it, and they had identified the enemies around them as being the Arab states. And they stated that every state in the Arab state has its own fault lines from within the society. We cannot, this is Israel speaking, that they cannot destroy these Arab states by conventional means. They have to work on these fault lines. And they stated, this is coming right out of their plan. The removal of Saddam Hussein will allow us to break up the country along ethnic and religious fault lines, Sunnis and Shiites, Kurds and Arabs. That is exactly what is happening now. They also stated that in Sudan, we can divide it into 4 countries. It is stated in there. South Sudan, West Sudan, East Sudan, and the North, where the Arabs are and where they are in the capital of Sudan.
Okay, and they're also going to divide Iraq, but what is...
Well, Iraq is divided.
Do you see?
They took Saudi Arabia and said it can be divided. Of course, you see, all these regimes in these countries, they were put originally by
England, that's right.
England and France. These are imperialist powers that put these regimes there to protect their own interests. And Saudi Arabia is ruled by a family. One family rules Saudi Arabia, as is most of Arab countries are ruled by one family that is put there by these imperialist powers. They did not inherit the throne in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
They did not inherit the throne in any of these Arab countries. When the Ottoman Empire was broken up into, well, was defeated, when the Ottoman Empire was defeated, the England and France took the map and divided those countries. Well, they were not countries, but divided the areas. And anyone wants to know that agreement, it is called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Sykes, S-Y-K-E-S, that is for the British guy, and Picot, P-I-C-O-T, for the French guy. Go see the Sykes-Picot Agreement, and you will see it's available on the internet. While you are at it, see the Zionist plan for the Middle East.
Okay, I want to ask you this. Wait, before you go any further, look, is it possible that in the back of somebody's mind, whoever is controlling what is going on now in Yemen, Egypt, what went down last week in that other Arab country, Tunisia, do you think oil is behind this thing, Dr. Tillawi, trying to get the price of oil down to where the West actually control not only the oil but also the price? And I'm gonna get off the phone and let you explain that. Thanks.
Okay, freedom. Okay. Well, you know, who's controlling? There are many forces at play here. Like I said, these are millions of people with legitimate grievances. legitimate concerns. But there are other forces that have other things in mind. There are some political issues that is going on in the area. There are political issues going on in the world. Egypt and the Arab world cannot be kept outside of that formula because Israel was implanted within that area. And that area cannot be kept forever the way it is. The status quo in the Middle East could not stay the way it is because it is not playing right within the formula of one world order and globalization. We've got to change these regimes. You know what? Hosni Mubarak, he could have went there, sent his army within 2 hours. Look, it happened in Tiananmen Square, and the Chinese now they are the preferred country for the United States. The Chinese did it. They stopped this pro-democracy movement. There were millions of people there. But the Chinese made a decision to send the army and control it. They did not worry about what the news media was going to do. They did not worry about what the world was going to say because you know what? The world understands and respects power. You show power, but you know what? Mubarak probably could have done that, but he did not do that. You know, all they had to do is send a couple of battalions there. They can force order. And you know something? Arab countries are well known in enforcing law and order. It doesn't matter if people go out there in the streets. They will put them down. But in Egypt, it did not happen. It did not happen because there are other forces at play. The stage was set for this. This is not spontaneous. The stage was set. Al Jazeera have been fueling this for many, many, many years. When it was time, it happened. What is needed from the Middle East is this: smaller countries, weaker countries, no Arab nationalism, because this Arab nationalism have been playing, I guess, had opposite effect for Israel and the United States. They want each country to be just like South America. Remember, South Americans, they were very much, same religion, same language, very much same ethnicities to a certain extent. Of course, you can exclude Brazil. But, these are the same people. But now, these are countries that are standing on its own, many times fighting with each other, divided into many different sectors and whatever. That's what they want the Middle East to be. They want these Arab countries because they are afraid that the Arab countries would actually unite if they continue to be within this particular group. They have something called the Arab League that is very much, I guess it's a private club made up of the political regimes and the ruling elites, the ruling regimes there. And they probably thought if these countries would remain this way, they might one day be united under the United Arab States. But of course, that's not going to happen anytime soon, especially with what we are seeing in Egypt. Egypt is going to go through turmoil for God knows how long. If Iraq has elected a government over a year and a half ago, they still don't have a government to speak of in Iraq. And in Iraq, turmoil will continue until the country is broken up, until the Kurds are on their own in the north and the Shiites and the Sunnis are split. That's when the game is over. And this is the beginning of Egypt and the other countries. In Lebanon, they're playing the same tricks, the same type of scenarios. going on in. Now, Egypt was a very important player in Middle East politics. Now, Egypt will not be a player in Middle East politics. And that's exactly what Israel wants. That's exactly what. See, the only hope for Arab people was Egypt. Now, Egypt is divided to a point of no return. The same people divided. If they were able to divide the Palestinians, which they're only, 4 or 5 million between the West Bank and Gaza, probably 5 million in those two territories there. They were able to divide them. They can also divide the Egyptians and they can divide the country. Now, it's this revolution. In order for this revolution to work, it's got to be directed and coming from the people. And so far, thus far, it is not the people directing it. The problem is a revolution in a country of 80 millions and no one is directing it, supposedly. No national leader is directing it. Al-Baradei, he just went back not long ago. So he could not be the national leader that is directing it. And, by the way, he is the West's man, and most people in Egypt do not want him. If the United States is successful, if George Soros is successful in planting the president there in Egypt of 80 million, it's going to be a disaster for everybody. And George Soros can do it. He was able to plant presidents in countries that are much larger than Egypt and much stronger than Egypt and had more democracy supposedly than Egypt. But I guess he found a way to work within that democracy, and he actually got Obama elected in this country. So the man is very powerful, but it's not just the man, it's the organization behind him, because money talks, and it talks in every country. And if a country is ill financially, George Soros can pump in 10 million, 15 million, it will go a long way in Egypt. $15 million to George Soros, it's nothing. Maybe 5 minutes worth of profit somewhere. So what if he spends $15 million on this revolution? $15 million can hire a lot of people and build organizations for Al-Baradei. It can have a whole army of the new Marines on the internet. This is how this revolution actually started. Everything now is controlled by the internet. You send in an army of 20, 40, 50, 100 people, $15 million can go a long way. $100 million will go even further at actually having people organized on the ground, and you can't spend the money because no one is going to go out there and start an organization for Al-Baradei if they are not being paid. What you see on the streets is one thing, and what goes on behind the scenes is another thing. Legitimate concerns for the people in Egypt, yes. The president must go, yes. It's long, I guess it's long overdue. Breaking up the country the way they are, it is not permissible, and the people in Egypt will not permit that. If these Zionist thugs out there thinking that they can control the people of Egypt, they got something coming for them. Now, these people in Egypt are proud people, and they are loved by all their brothers in the Middle East. But everybody is concerned about the future of Egypt. It looks like the powers that be have decided what Egypt will look like and what the political scene in Egypt will look like. That is explained why the Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood, one of the oldest organizations, political organizations in Egypt, and it has grassroots all over Egypt. would give concessions to Al Baradei, who just went back not long ago. They understand how globalization works, and they understand what they need to do. Is it a gamble, or should they stand on it on their own? In my opinion, it's a gamble. It's a big gamble that they will end up paying for later by associating themselves with the West. Do I like seeing what's going on in Egypt? No. Am I supporting the president in Egypt? No. When people hear me talk that way, they think I am with the president. I am not. I am with the people. I have been with the people. I am with Egypt. I am with the country. I understand how the game is played, and I know the conspiracy that is being played on Egypt and its people. I have been doing this for many, many years, and I have proven that I was right on many of these issues because the plan is out there and they are exercising that plan. They cannot control the country militarily. They have to control it politically. This whole thing has to do with Israel being a superpower in that region. Israel already a superpower, but Israel wants to change the map in the Middle East. It wants to change the logistical map as well as the political map. The only people who will get caught in this stampede is the Palestinians. Because if Egypt is taken out of the formula, the Palestinians will not be able to stand on their own. Egypt must stay united Egypt. Egypt must stay the Arab force behind the Palestinians, behind. Now, we're talking about Egypt, we're talking about people, we're not talking about regimes. Regimes come and go based on the desires of the Zionists in the West. As we know, all the governments in the country, in those countries in the Middle East, are puppet regimes, puppet governments put there by their handlers in the West. And they do have handlers. We have the people in those countries, and the people in those countries must understand not to fall into these traps that the West is putting out there for them, because it is the same countries that are calling for change in regime in Egypt, the same countries as Germany, Spain, England, and France. These are the same countries that supported that regime for 30 years. They are not your friends. The United States is the country that has supported that regime and the regime before him. It is not your friend. Israel is the one behind every evil, and they are not friends either. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what is, in a nutshell, the plan to divide the Middle East, the Zionist plan for the Middle East? That's exactly how, if you need to go and Google that one, search it, Yahoo it, or whatever you want to do with it, you will find the information you need. Israel's strategy in the 1980s. They wrote the book on how they are going to do it. After Israel's strategy in the 1980s, the clean break document was written by the same Zionists who, in 2003, were in control of the White House to go and attack Iraq. The preemptive strikes they talked about in the New American Century, which is the third document that you need to go and search. Put these three documents together, you will have the answer to what is going on in the Middle East and what is to come. Strategies for Israel in 1980s, clean break, New American Centuries. Look at the personalities involved in all these three. You will understand what is happening today in Egypt. People will prevail. Imperialist powers have been going in and out of these Arab countries for centuries. the people will prevail, and the people will speak victory to the people in Egypt. And stay, brothers. Don't destroy the country. Don't destroy the country. Go do the right thing. We'll see you next Thursday.